Without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Chuck, Suchy, and Jessie Veeder.
Thank you. And I'm just thrilled to be here, honestly, to sit up on a stage with you, Chuck. I've been admiring your work, and we listened to your stuff in the feed pickup when I was growing up. And,
Please.
and now that I'm grown up. But honestly, don't think I would still be doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for the stories. So to have an event like this that's really focused on the stories behind the songs, but also the stories that are the songs, I think is really special to me, and it gets me really excited to be up here to talk about it, because I grew up listening to folk music that was coming out of my dad's record player, out of his guitar, of course, in the basement, and I just fell in love with songwriters that could put me in a moment, even when I was like 6 or 7 years old. I fell in love with Lyle Lovett's Waltz and Fool. Like, play that over and over for me, because that man was such a mystery, but also I felt like compassion for him. I wanted to know him. So I wanted to become a songwriter so that I could put people in that moment, those 3 or 4 minutes where you could really sit down and feel like you could relate to someone or see someone or know the feeling, know the space that they were in. I don't know how to write a song, if that's what we're supposed to answer today, except for, I think, and Chuck, maybe you would agree, it's to sit down and take the time to listen and then give yourself some space, and sometimes it just comes to you. I've noticed that space, we say space now in a time of COVID, but the time that we give ourselves, and especially me as a working mom and a working person, is harder and harder to come by. It's a little bit more precious, and so I have to guard it a little bit more closely in my day and age. But I'm excited to share some of my favorite songs with you this afternoon. The first one I'm going to sing for you is a kickoff to the album that I wrote when I first moved back to the ranch, and it's been almost 10 years now that I've been home as a rancher, and everything in between, like we do when you are a rancher. You have like 16 other jobs. I'm a walking example of that. Some days I'm walking, some days I'm running. Most days I'm driving, most days I'm late. The other day I was stuck in a snowbank, and really stuck in a snowbank, Chuck. Like, I had to bring my girls to get to school on time because I have a kindergartner, and so I went down to get my little sister. I plowed right into a snowbank. Not only was I so stuck enough that my husband couldn't pull me out, my brother-in-law had to pull him to pull me out, and then my dad had to come with the tractor just to laugh at me. It was a tough morning. But this song speaks to that feeling when I came back to the ranch, and of course, the landscape was changing in western North Dakota very rapidly 10 years ago. It was like I left in 2001, I came back, I blinked, and like everyone from all over the world was in my community that was dying when I left. And it was something that was so astronomically hard to wrap your mind around, because the reason that we could be there was because the economy was booming, but then also, what did I think about an oil well coming up over the landscape? It was really not a black and white situation. I'll talk more about this, but I remember writing this song, walking out to my favorite pasture, the east pasture. I had my dogs with me. I swore I saw a mountain lion. I thought I was gonna die that day. Didn't have mountain lions when I was growing up out there. And I thought, well, I'm here for good, and that big barn that used to be so big when I was little certainly shrunk. That big house that used to be so big when I was little certainly shrunk when I brought all my stuff in there, and all of my boot collection and all my instruments and all the hand-me-down furniture. And sometimes I think we want to keep a place so precious we don't let it bloom the way it needs to bloom, but that's kind of where the inspiration came from for this song. This is called Nothing's Forever. Sometimes I don't know the difference between summer and winter and the season of spring. Sometimes I don't know how happy to be, because nothing's forever, baby. Summer brings thistle and winter brings snow. All of the seasons, it's the last one to go. It stays till the sun baby. If you hold tight the water, it'll slip through your hands. The same goes for wild birds and hourglass sands. You can chase down the light of the last setting sun, but you will not catch it, no matter how fast you run. Of all the wild things no one can tame, one thing remains, one thing still remains. I climbed to the hilltop and opened my hands, but nothing stares back but a dry piece of land. Sometimes I am scared I won't know who I am, because nothing's forever, baby. Call to the river and tell her my name. She cuts through the valley, road in the banks. She used to know me in a different way, singing nothing's forever, baby. If you hold tight the water, it'll slip through your hands. The same goes for wild birds and hourglass sands. You can chase down the light of the last setting sun, but you will not catch it, no matter how fast you run. All the wild things no one can tame, one thing remains, one thing still remains. I knew you when you were a child of the wind. You didn't have burdens like your daddy did. You rode on broke horses, and man, how you lived like nothing's forever, baby. Now I see you have worries and lines round your eyes from a world made you smaller with all its goodbyes. And the earth just keeps spinning from day into night, singing nothing's forever, baby. If you hold tight the water, it'll slip through your hands. The same goes for wild birds and hourglass sands. You can chase down the light of the last setting sun, but you will not catch it, no matter how fast you run. Of all the wild things no one can tame, one thing remains, one thing still remains. My love is forever, baby.
Thank you. That's, oh man, your voice, woman.
I didn't lose it. They tried to cut it out of me, but yeah.
Well, I'm glad. We're all glad. Thank you. Talking about where the songs come from, and I agree. I agree. Silence and sort of the blank page of the soul sometimes is what what is required. And I just heard this or read this the other day, that we have two ears and only one mouth. And so I'm not going to be saying much today. I really feel fortunate having had the opportunity, although I thought for most of my early life that the farm was a prison, and that there was all this life out beyond, and I was ignoring the life at hand. But that even being said, the life at hand was still speaking of its own, because it has its own value and its own voice. And somehow that was able to be absorbed, and somehow between heart and soul and mind, some songs emerged. But it was that sort of monastic experience for me, I believe, that fostered much of what you're going to hear today. And yeah, there was times where it was calculated, where I was trying to be like a Nashville songwriter or be somebody else. And then over time realized that I was already there, that I already was being. And so at this stage of life especially, it's not a matter of a calculation, it's a matter of gratitude to be. So see, the tongue is getting really floppy here. So, but and just being alone out on the swather or the tractor or out fixing fence, and then realizing that somehow there's this osmosis or rising of spirit from the maybe the soil, maybe from past souls that walked that land as well. I don't know. To the morning light tender, shadows shallowly fall, night will surrender, like the hay standing tall to the reel and the sickle, as they gather the take into legion of windrows, churning stern wheeler wake in June fields, hang your heart on the moon field, June fields of home, with an eye on the weather, hand on the wheel, we're workers together, both muscle and steel, push and there's hurry, try to hasten the game, though it's worthy of worry. Still is welcome the rain to June fields, hang your heart on the moon field, June fields of home. Quick the cold thunder calls, with relief for us all, as we wait out the squall in June fields. In the deep of December, while the moon glazes snow, asleep by the ember, deep in dream paths I go, lark and the plover, voice concerned for their young, in sweet grass and clover, sweet forgiveness is sung in June fields, hang your heart on the moon field, June fields of home. Thank you.
That's one of those songs that I hear and I'm like, dang, I wish I would have written that one. And so much of what you write, Chuck, resonates with me. I was, grew up in a time where we had 2 radio stations at the ranch. We had the one that played Reba McEntire, and then the other one that played some sort of classic rock, and then, of course, whatever Dad was listening to in the tractor, the AM radio with the news and the sports. So I was always hungry for music that I felt connected with. And then there were times where I was, growing up learning to play the guitar so that I could write these songs and wondering, like, should I try to write what I hear on the radio? But that's never, like, the way it went. What was always inspiring to me, and I say this when I'm talking to kids, we're lucky up here in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of everything, North Dakota. The weather and the landscape, it's so dramatic. It's so, like yesterday when the wind was blowing across the interstate, it's so dramatic. It's a character in its own right, and every single day it's different. Every single minute it's different. And when you're a kid raised on a ranch and on the edge of the Badlands, the way even the light hits was inspiring to me. And so it became kind of the weather became a backdrop to my songs as much as the landscape did. And I doubt I've ever written really a song that didn't have the weather in it. I don't think I write anything that doesn't have some sort of element of me being cold or hot or uncomfortable or something's, pricking my legs and, the itchy grass or whatever, because it's so much of a connection to me. And once I realized, like, that's kind of where it was for me, that inspiration for me, I knew that I couldn't be anywhere else but home to really be truly inspired. And so when you were writing, singing that song of home and these June fields and every little moment that ticks by on a ranch is another season. It's branding season, it's harvest season, it's feeding cow season. Like, we're into the next thing, and we all look a little bit different. I was talking about how, you're a totally different person in your summer clothes than in your winter clothes around here. 74 layers later, oh, really? And the mittens that you have to put on these kids, that's a whole nother thing. So it's like 7 years later, can we just go outside? Where's your mitten? I don't know. Where's your other mitten? I don't know. Where's your thumb? I don't know. You just put it in your glove. Oh my gosh. Anyway, that's the phase I'm at right now. What are we doing in Bismarck? Looking for mittens. What do I do when I pick my kids up? Go to Lost and Found. So I wanted to share a song. I think everyone, and I'm sure you do too, has a song about rain in some sort of form, because we're so, of course, connected to what the sky does in agriculture. And we didn't have as many drops as we wanted to this summer, and we had a dry summer, and we were lucky we had some springs that we could put in, and we were lucky that we could keep our cows. But I have this memory of the rain being something on a hot August day that would interrupt the work that we would always do on a hot August day, like fencing, like at 2 o'clock in the afternoon with maybe not enough supplies and one fencing post and maybe missing gloves and not enough bug spray, and everyone's hot and everyone's miserable, and then the sky opens up the way it does, or it comes rumbling in over the hills and it just lets loose on you and you get to go inside. Like, sometimes that's the only way you get a break. And when I was growing up, my dad working in town and also as a rancher, we did a lot of tagging along, and that was fun. We didn't do a lot of recreating in terms of, like, going to the lake. Everyone had a boat but us, But we live right by Lake Sakakawea. But we would sometimes, if it was going to rain, get to dig worms in the garden and go out to the shores of Lake Sakakawea and set our little lawn chairs on the edge and then watch my friends drive by on jet skis. But I wouldn't have changed it, the catfishing by the river. But all of that rain and all of that weather determined what kind of fun or what kind of work we were going to do. And so I always found that kind of interesting. But when I wrote this song, it was actually during the time when my dad was deathly ill. And he had it was one of the times he tried to die. I tell him, quit trying because you suck at it, really. His heart had aortic dissection, tried to kill him, and he was back home trying to recover, and I was writing music because that's what I do to kind of get through those hard things. And I wrote this song about rain based on a memory of riding my horse, my mare, and my little sister riding her horse named Jerry. a little tiny pony that would sometimes just be sick of it and lay down, And we would ride 7 miles to the reservation to trail cattle there or trail them back or just check on them, and they were there in the fall. And one time, and who knows, our memories sometimes are more dramatic than, mostly my memories are more dramatic in a story than they are in real life, so this one maybe grew. But a storm was coming that we didn't know was coming, and we were way out on the reservation. And Dad said, okay, the sky's getting dark, we're gonna get home late, it's gonna be dark. So you all just separate, okay? So we hopefully don't get struck by lightning. And the thing that they always tell you when you're riding horses out there is if you get separated, you go on the top of the hill and holler, or maybe that's just what I learned to do. And then if you can't find anyone, you just let your horse's head go and she'll go home. But I never really believed that because my horse would just stop and eat. And so I thought perhaps I was gonna die out there and never make it back to the ranch for supper. But we let our horses space out, and the rain came. And it poured on us, and we got to ride in a thunderstorm in the dark. Oh my gosh, I was a cowboy. And we made it home safe, and my grandma had died a couple years prior to that, and we were down in the barnyard with a barnyard light on, and you thought, oh, I'm alive. And I swear I could smell her roast in the oven, even though no one was in that little farmhouse. So this is raining. I am long-winded, Chuck. Sorry. I'm Lutheran. Sun beats down, turning my pale skin brown. And I have been cold for months, so I turn my face up. I hear the thunder crack, heavy drops lick at my back. And I think how nice it is that I could cool down like this. Oh, it's raining and lightning. Oh, it's pouring. We can't get the crop in. Come on and sit down. Come on into the house. Come on in now. Come on in. I'll take that heavy coat. You're soaked to the skin, to the bone, and I'll cook you something warm while we wait out the storm. There's nothing like summer heat, cooled by a thundering breeze. There's nothing like you and me. Oh, it's pouring. And oh, it's raining. Oh, we can't get the crop in. Come on and sit down. Come on into the house. Come on in now. Come on in. Looks like it's letting up. Steam pours from your coffee cup, held by your calloused hands. Oh, I like this change of plans. I pull your collar up. This weather is like our love. It's pouring the heat on us, then it's raining. Thank you.
There was this lovely couple, Daryl and I can't remember his, Daryl Klein, and was his wife Cora? Millie. From Mandan? Millie Klein. No, they were both blind. Yeah, Millie. Was it Millie? Oh, okay, I'm sorry, Millie. But they were just wonderful, this wonderful couple, and Daryl, after we got to know them, he had been blinded, I think, in his teens, and then he met his wife at the School for the Blind. But they were just true blue Mandan residents. You could often see Daryl walking alone in Mandan. And one time I asked him about that. I said, how do you get around? He says, well, every building has a different sound. I can hear the weather or the traffic reverberate off each building. I know exactly where I am. And he said, my trouble now isn't that I can't see, it's that I can't hear. Yes. So here I am, putting my ear up to the microphone like that's good. What's with that? And so I want to just progress a little bit in the idea of songwriting and just the craft of it. And I was asked to write some songs or partake in a songwriting exercise with the council that was produced by the Council for the Arts called Art for Life. And the idea was to go into care centers and work with or just be with residents who probably didn't know they had songs within them, and to help exorcise those feelings in terms of music and song. And but COVID hit, and so I ended up doing a whole bunch of telephone interviews. And I was talking with about, 20 people who frequented the Burleigh County Senior Center. And they all talked about how they missed going and eating with their friends together, but they also were grateful that they could still get like Meals on Wheels. And so it always went back to food. And I was thinking when you talked about the smelling your grandma's cooking in the farmhouse, and that is such a common attaching factor, I think. And so I went to the Burleigh County Senior Center website and looked up what all this fantastic food was supposedly about, and looking for the poetry there. And there it was. It's everywhere if we are open to it and have our ears and eyes on. And so this is called The Menu. I'll find it. If you're hungry in your tummy and your heart is hungry too, the Senior Center can get you better. They can bring it home to you. They got meals that put on wheels, like finger licking, fried chicken at the center. Senior Center, they feed your body and your soul. They got a menu that will tend you with a side of rock and roll. They can grill you, fulfill you with finger-licking fried chicken. meatloaf gravy, oh, so savory, cod fillet on pilaf rice, chicken dumplings, really something, vanilla pudding cooled on ice. They got oodles, beef tip noodles, and finger-licking chicken, fried chicken at the center, senior center. They feed your body and your soul. They got a menu that will tend you with a side of rock and roll. They can grill you, they can fill you with finger-licking chicken, fried chicken. Baked lasagna, oh, come on, yeah. Cheesy hash brown casserole, spaghetti meatballs, the garlic's your call. Dill potatoes, cabbage rolls, taco salad, tater scalloped, and finger-licking chicken, fried chicken at the center, senior center. They feed your body and your soul. They got a menu that will tend you with a side of rock and roll. They can grill you, they fill you with finger-licking chicken, fried chicken at the center, senior center. Hey. You gotta say it. I know you want to say it. Because part of songwriting for me is I always go to, how does this feel coming off my lips? Does it feel good? So just say, okay, finger-licking chicken, fried chicken. Finger-licking chicken, fried chicken.
And that, folks, is how you make a song out of the Senior Center menu. Dang! How do I follow that? That's
You'll
Lutheran
think of
thing.
something,
Yeah.
don't worry.
That food thing, like, I have to have a meal after everything? Absolutely you do. Lunch and a snack.
One of the other thing was, I just want to elaborate about just some of the idea there was like with a side of rock and roll. And I had visited with some care center directors about a year and 2 years ago, maybe. We were talking about what the changes in like going into what would they want for activities, and it just dawned on me that, you know, at some point, "You Are My Sunshine" is maybe going to fade off, you know, and they're going to want to have Inagata Davida or something, blue suede shoes at least, you know. So sing us some of them old songs, you know. One for the money, come on.
I think you're right on.
So anyway, that's where the line with a side of rock and roll, because I just envisioned the Meals on Wheels worker leaving, you know, getting out of his car and the radio's blaring some oldies station.
I like that visual. Making its
All right.
rounds. I love it. Rock and roll chicken. Yeah. I like it. But that food thing, like, I think I have a couple of songs that, there's one that has like a dumpling floating in it. You know? It's like you have, when I talk to kids about writing that, the taste and the smells, those are the things that really evoke memory. So it doesn't surprise me that that's what they were talking to you about. And even in my childhood, like the smell of the basement of the Lutheran church, what these people were cooking down there, and how, you know, I'm going to call my mom out because I do the same thing. Like, she came from Grand Forks in a different world and came into the middle of nowhere, western North Dakota. They still had party lines out there when she moved out there with this cowboy. And they asked her to make something for, church because you're on a schedule, and she's not much of a baker, so she just made sure that she took it out of the cellophane before she brought it down to them. And I just was asked to do the same thing at our little church. We still have the country churches out there. And this woman, I was busy, of course, and I grabbed something in Minot, and I took it out and put it on the platter, and she's, "Oh, I just love this. I have to get your recipe." And I'm like, I can't lie in church about this. I did not make it. And I said, I got it at Marketplace Foods, and she was like, the look that changed on her face was like, she was so disappointed. I almost wished I could have lied to her, or just at least not said something. Like, just, yeah, I'm glad you like it. Anyway. But the characters that I grew up with, it took a while for me to get that when I started songwriting. Really just started with things that I didn't think the world would ever see. And I think that's a really good place to start because there's no pressure there. It's just a musing, it's just an oozing out of you, and I think that really helped me process a lot of things in my life as a teenager growing up, and a kid growing up in the middle of nowhere in a world that's changing. Sometimes feel like it's changing really, really fast for our kids, but the idea that I could just put it down. A lot of early writing for me was introspective, so introspective. The hardest part for me, but the most fun now as a songwriter, is to create characters, is to see these characters in my life that, like, the woman at the Lutheran Church, June, how her voice sounded above the quiet, the rest of the congregation in that church, and how you knew that June was going to lead you to the end of glory, glory. No one can ever get that together at church on Christmas. Like, we would just sit there giggling, but June would bring it home, right? June would help us. So trying to capture those characters in the essence of these humans is a hard thing to do as a songwriter. It's a hard thing to do as a novelist or a writer in the columns every week. I have to write a column every single week, almost 700 words every week for 8 years. I can't believe I do that sometimes. Yes, thank you. Thank you, please. It's a lot harder some days than others, but the characters in my life in rural America for me have been the thing that has been the most fun to write. And so with that, I think I'm going to share a song that was inspired by my immigrant great-grandmother. And she came over, and a lot of us have similar stories about our great-grandparents, but she was almost 100 years old when I knew her in the nursing home. And she had a cane, and she had a picture of her 12 children. They had one picture of all of them together. But the youngest was photoshopped in on her lap because they never got a full family picture together. And when I say photoshopped, I mean cut out and taped on her lap in that picture. But she is a woman, like when I'm complaining of how life is on the ranch, how I just, crashed my SUV into a snowbank that was playing like a movie for my kids, Frozen on repeat, and it was hot in there with the heated seats, and I'm complaining about the 30-mile drive to town, and I come from a crop of people who came over here for a better life. She came over because they couldn't afford her in Norway. They couldn't afford to keep her in the family. They sent her off across the fjord to work as a housekeeper, and she decided at 16 to come over across the ocean and onto Ellis Island and then into Minnesota, where she met her husband, and they came out to the middle of nowhere at a time in our landscape there wasn't a tree in sight, right? Lots of wind, not a tree in sight. Her husband rode his bicycle 80 miles to Crosby to stake a claim. His bicycle, like I can't ride my bike up a hill on a gravel road without thinking it's the end is near. But these hardy people. So I channeled her a lot, especially in early motherhood, and I'll probably play a couple more songs about motherhood. But this song is about these women out there that helped homestead these places. When I moved into my grandma's house 10 years ago as an adult woman, I didn't have kids yet. Suddenly I was transported to like the understanding of the sacrifice that my grandma made to raise her kids in this place, before the conveniences of diapers delivered to your door and chicken nuggets in a microwave. Like, they had chickens, and that's where they got their chicken nuggets. Like, I can't even imagine it, but it's humbling, I guess is what I'm saying. And so I was channeling her and her strength. And in this song, after an argument with my husband about landscaping, which when you are married to a rancher and he's now a professional carpenter, like there's a lot of arguments you get into about the things that you would like to have done around the place so your house could look a little more like Martha Stewart's and a little less like, well, the cow in it. I mean, that's all there is. Could you please just fix the fence so I don't have to scoop poop out of the playground area, perhaps? It's always a no, by the way. He always has something better to do. So we were arguing about whether or not he should scoop some scoria in the front driveway, and he said no, he had something better to do that day, which I agree, I'm sure. So I said, just teach me to drive the Bobcat, and he saw that how much I like to mow the lawn because no one bothers me when I'm mowing the lawn on my riding lawnmower that I bought myself for Mother's Day 3 years ago. And then how many times he's come into the yard and I've literally been stuck in the lawnmower. I've been stuck in the mud on the lawnmower, and they always show up before you can get it out. So he said no to the Bobcat, and he said no to the chainsaw. I was gonna cut trails, so I quit losing my beanies, because we have trees there now, a whole bunch of trees. So many beanies and gloves have been sacrificed in those trees, so I was gonna cut a trail. And he said no. I said, you'd be the only person to figure out how to cut her own damn head off, Jessie. He's known me since I was 12. He's not wrong, but still. So I went out and started shoveling because I figured it was kind of raining, and if Great Grandma Gudrun, she could do it. She could raise 12 kids out here. I'm sure she never complained. I could shovel some scoria. So I went out and shoveled scoria, about 35 minutes, just long enough to write this song. Now work, girl, show me your muscles. Work, girl, pull back your hair. Work, girl, the day is long. Work ain't going nowhere. Picking rocks and raising babies, pennies heads up on the street, muddy boots and no complaining, gotta keep shoes on their feet. You might be born to be a sinner, might be born to be a saint, might be born to save each other, weren't born with money in the bank. So work, girl, show me your muscles. Work, girl, pull back your hair. Work, girl, the day is long. Work ain't going nowhere. When I fall, I get back up. Taught myself to drive this truck. Rains, it shines on all this dirt. Pull on your pants, girl, get to work. Can't be raised to wait for the day someone show us what's right. Car is broke, oh girl, you fix it. Can't fix it, go get your bike. Trees need trimming, get the chainsaw. Gardens planted, horses fed. Monday comes, you button up, girl. 9 to 5 and 5 till bed. And work, girl, show me your muscles. Work, girl, pull back your hair. Work, girl, the day is long. Work ain't going nowhere. When I fall, I get back up. Taught myself to drive this truck. Rains, it shines on all this dirt. Pull on your pants, girl, get to work. He can't lift it, you can push it. Thinks he knows, well, so do you. Get some wire and make the lights work. Climb that ladder, get the tool. So work, girl, show me your muscles. Work, girl, pull back your hair. Work, girl, the day is long. Work ain't going nowhere. Work, girl, don't wait for no man. Can't do it, you can't work, girl, saw, nail, and grind. Work, go build clock is ticking. Go cut a path. You hear them talking. Work, girl, go kick some. Thank you. I don't know if June would approve or not, perhaps.
I've been readjusting some of my thoughts about and rediscovering some new things in old songs, and and they always it amazes me the stuff that's there that I didn't realize was there, and I was and it just gets me thinking about things, and I remember. My mom would take me to Mass every Sunday into Mandan, and after Mass, we would drive out on Highway 6, and we'd always stop at this little store that was by the golf course. I think it was called the Park Store. And somehow, whether Mom shorted the collection or what, I'm not sure, but there was a couple of quarters handed to me, and then I'd go in and buy a couple of either candy bars or an ice cream cone, and usually it was candy bars, and then we'd carry on going up the big hill on Highway 6, just south of the Heart River, and we weren't even halfway up the hill, and I'd have those candy bars unwrapped, and I've had them torn open, unwrapped, I'd have the window rolled down, and the candy wrappers tossed out into the highway ditch without a thought or a reprimand from my mother or a thought from myself about what I was doing. That was just accepted. It was what we did with our candy wrappers and other paraphernalia. My neighbor Al Gusson is here. We often have talked about the transition in mowing the highway ditches along Highway 6, the transition from the plastic to the plastic area from the paper tin era. And and there's nothing like getting a well-aged, well-filled plastic diaper stuck in the mower. And oh, come on, grow up. That's the reality. But so I would toss those candy wrappers out without a thought, and just thinking that it was accepted, that was the way it was. And you were speaking of accepting change earlier, and I was thinking about this. And now I'm having to accept other kinds of changes at this time of life, and it's not scary, but it does take a certain amount of courage and to accept that you can't just throw your garbage in the ditch. And for a long time, I thought that naively and maybe arrogantly thought that by writing and singing these songs about Dakota breezes and sunsets, that how could people not appreciate the landscape more? And yet, that's not necessarily the case. So that's why I'm kind of at crossroads here in songwriting right now. But it was also accepted to just pass by what I now call the shadows of the spirits of the vanquished, who were often walking along Highway 6 as well in 1806, who would be walking to their community at Standing Rock. And we would pass them by without a thought. It was just, no, maybe we didn't even see them. And but through that voice of truth that we, if we are listening, is always speaking, we can learn. And I was given this gift. I was about 15 years old. I was driving that truck to town. Well, one of my first trips where I was hauling spring wheat into the elevator in Mandan, and Dad was out combining and waiting for me to return. And on the return trip, on 1806, there was this figure walking along the highway. And Perhaps I'd passed by him many, many, many times before, but for some reason on that day, the gift of recognition was given. And I heard the voice that said, it's a hot August day, he could use a ride. And it was without fear. It just was. And I slowed down, kicked the door open, he climbed in, and I started working my way up through the gears. I wanted to impress him with my double clutching and not grinding a single gear, but he was not to be impressed, and his silence made me even more nervous, with his head held high and staring straight ahead. And finally, the silence was broken by his own voice. He said, yeah, I'm Rainbow, Kenny Rainbow. Yeah, I'm a singer, you know. And there again, naive, not necessarily malevolent naivety, but just not knowing, not realizing what he was trying to tell me, that he was somebody, that he wasn't a candy wrapper discarded along the North Dakota highway. So it became a new way of knowing. In my daddy's old truck, a Dodge G55, I was 15 years old, just coming alive. He stood on the shoulder, too proud to ask. I threw her in neutral and slipped off the gas. I slowed to a roll on that gravelly grade. He climbed in the cab, no eye contact made. 6 miles of silence, his head held up high. To my question unasked, I heard his reply. I'm Rainbow, Kenny Rainbow, I'm a singer, you know. On the highway to heaven, the journey is slow. Till I come to my drum at the big powwow show. I'm Rainbow, Kenny Rainbow, I'm a singer, you know. His voice held conviction from deep within inside, deeper than ego and far beyond pride. 30 years later, it came to me clear, he was a keeper of culture with stories to hear. My head in its youth passed over his words. My heart held truth of all that it heard. We came to his corner, I know I was blessed, as he called from the gravel into my past. I'm Rainbow, Kenny Rainbow, I'm a singer, you know. On the highway to heaven, the journey is slow. Till I come to my drum at the big powwow show. I'm Rainbow, Kenny Rainbow, I'm a singer, you know. Now I sing the stage lights, clear prairie stars, in holy old churches, in smoke holy bars. I bury my neighbors with song. I know I'm a singer and where I belong. Like Rainbow, Kenny Rainbow, I'm a singer, you know. On the highway to heaven, the journey is slow. Till I come to my drum at the big powwow show. Like Rainbow, Kenny Rainbow, I'm a singer, you know. Like Rainbow, Kenny Rainbow, I'm a singer, yeah, no. I'm a singer, you know. Thank you.
Oh, that's my favorite. We whistled that one. That's such a great, exactly what I was talking about, trying to capture a character. You did it right there in a moment where you just get a glimpse into them, and then perhaps you don't know their whole story, but you get to construct it a little bit in that song. Just perfect. What we always had growing up, with talking about those characters, is the Senex station on the corner by the chuck wagon, right? And that's where you got to know what was really maybe happening or what people thought was happening there at the chuck wagon. And we would always go in. I would go in with my grandma Edie before she died. She died when I was about 11. We moved back to the ranch when I was in 2nd grade. And I was so ready to be at that ranch with my dad that my mom told me I just packed up my things when they said that, because my grandpa had died. And I was born out there, but then we had just terrible economy in the early 80s, sent my dad back to Grand Forks to work with in the university system, and my mom as well. We lived in a little white house on Maple Avenue, and I walked to school. And I would go back to the ranch every time I could with my dad and see my grandma and grandpa. When my grandpa died, we moved back there, and I packed my bag so fast and was in the passenger seat of my dad's pickup with no back seats. That's back when they had pickups with no back seats. And my mom says, like, I can't believe, but I can believe you just left me like that. My mom and my 2 sisters back in Grand Forks to sell the house, and I lived with my grandma. And in the basement in that little brown house that seemed so big when I was so small. And she would take me into town, and we would go to Barrett's Pharmacy. They had a parrot in the basement with the craft supplies, I'll never forget, and the people that worked there and the way that it smelled. And then, of course, down to the bank, and then to the Chuck Wagon Cafe, where my Uncle Paul, her brother, would offer me a pinch of snooze every single time. And that smell still is like my Uncle Paul. And like, I can't believe it. And then we would get sprinkles on ice cream, on chocolate ice cream from Dixie, who now owns their own cafe in Keene. And I always wonder, what they moved that Senex station out onto the bypass, and I wondered if those guys would go with it, and they change things in a town like Watford City. It's like you want to keep it the way that you've always known it because it's your hometown, it's your small town. Well, that can't really be true for towns and communities in rural America. If they stay the same, they're dying in a way, and that's something I always knew, having a dad as an economic development person, trying to keep this town alive, trying to get people in, trying to create jobs. That wasn't lost on me coming back home and seeing, well, the Senex station's moved out on the bypass has moved out around town. The old S&S isn't where the old S&S is, but if you tell me to go by the old car dealership, I'm going to go by the same old car dealership. Like, all of these places have changed, and I wonder if I wondered if these people would move with it. And so we have some of these old timers. They still go to the Senex even though it's on the bypass. They still meet there for coffee every morning and talk about the old times and the hard times and the times that are happening and that are upon us now. And I always thought as a kid, when I sat up on, have our neighbors come in their coveralls from a day like this, it's freezing cold, they smell like diesel exhaust a little bit. Kelly Hanna always kept his overalls on. He still does. He's freezing all the time, a little Irish bald man. Freezing cold, feeding cows, come in to warm up and tell stories. Just totally fascinated by it. Wondering as a kid, like, isn't it easier to live somewhere else? Why do we make it so hard on ourselves here in this place? But not really wondering, not really thinking that I would do anything different. Just thinking like, well, how dramatic are we? How these stories kind of shape and mold us? And would we have these stories to tell at Senex if we just picked an easy life and all of these characters in it? So that's the inspiration for this song. It's called It Ain't Easy, but the inspiration is if we had it easy, if it wasn't so dramatic, if we didn't make it hard on ourselves in this way we do in North Dakota as ranchers and farmers and people trying to grow these small towns and keep these places alive, what the hell would we talk about at Senex? I don't know. Rose up from that dirt road where she fell off of that big horse, left a bit of skin from knuckles and her knees. But not a tear fell from her, not a single scared emotion, except for a kick and a gritting of her teeth. Oh, it ain't easy. behind her, said in this world you would not find her. Another girl is brave and strong and free. You know when you fall, I catch you in. When you're lost, I bet you will. All you are, you won't even need me. Oh, it ain't easy, no. Oh, it ain't easy, no. If it were easy, we'd find another way. If we weren't scared as hell, it's not living anyway. Let the hard times in, let them make us brave. Wouldn't want to learn a lesson any other way. She said behind those brown eyes is a woman who still loves him, looking at a man who would not let her down. He said, when you smile, I'm smiling. When you laugh, I'm laughing with you. And when you cry, I cannot bear the sound. Oh, it ain't easy, no. Oh, it ain't easy, no. If it were easy, we'd find another way. If we weren't scared as hell, it's not living anyway. Let the hard times in, let them make us brave. Wouldn't want to learn a lesson any other way. It ain't just muscles on these bones, or the dirt-caked face of home. It's the fight, the breath, the beat, the kind of hope that brings you to your feet. Come on now, girl, the fall's not a sin. You might be broken, but you're gonna live. You're scared as hell, but don't you dare cry. Get back on that horse, get back up and try. The breeze moved past the curtains as that woman took her last breath, and he took a breath right with her in that room. He said all good things go softly like a wave into the ocean, like a snowflake on a Sunday afternoon. Oh, it ain't easy, no. Oh, it ain't easy, no.
Wow. That's powerful, that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, going through change, Jessie. It's, I remember I was doing I think the Watford City High School right after the Bakken thing exploded, and I drove over. I remember the principal calling me. He said, well, when you get to, is it 85? He said, just get in line and don't pass.
And don't panic, and I hope you pee.
Yeah. And it was just crazy. I couldn't believe that was the same old western North Dakota that I had frequented. And so there's a line that I wrote in my journal: when all you thought you knew is not. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where do you go? Where do you go? And so when the flood of 2011 just inundated the river bottoms that were a very special part of the farm for me, and still is, and the tall cottonwoods, many of them just standing in water that long, and a couple of windstorms laid a lot of them over, and I thought they were invincible. It was naively thinking my songs were going to preserve the beauty in North Dakota, and maybe they will, I don't know. But I also naively thought those cottonwoods were invincible, and seeing them lay over was quite troubling. But it was all a metaphor. for things to come, like a pandemic. And I was just, while you were singing, these thoughts were going through my head, and I was thinking about, I had a cousin who is a very good singer, very good musician, but she called me. She said, "Well, I got this offer from Nashville from this guy, and he says I'm really really good, and that if I send him $500, he can and a tape, he's gonna make a star out of me, and then I can go down there." And she was just going on, and I said, I'm not going to tell you it's not true, but sometimes when we want something so bad, like I want it to be without masks tonight. I want it to be like it was. I really do. But sometimes I said to her at that point, I said, when your dad wants to bale that alfalfa, and it's just not ready. It's just not at the right moisture content. And if he does go out and bale it, it's going to spoil. And as bad as he wants to bale, that's just not the truth. And I said, you might want to think about that with this offer from Nashville. It's not all up to us. When the world seems washed away, don't know what to say or do. Above the water on the rise, starry skies seem far and few. Somehow we've got to find the love. Find the love in all the heartache and pain. Find the love, find the love. Earth will turn with healing change. When the world seems torn apart, broken heart in two, and all you thought you knew is not. Got to find what's true. Find the love, find the love in all the heartache and pain. Find the love, find the love. Somehow we got to find the love. It's not all up to you. Sun and moon know this true. River do what river do. Find the love, find the love. In all this mess, confess, construe. Find the love, find the love. Somehow we're gonna find the love.
you. Should we do one more each?
That's a great song, a good message for these times that keep dragging on after us, finding the hope in it all. And, I found that in my struggle. COVID hit. I got cancer in my airway. It was blocking 90% of my airway as a singer and a mom running and chasing everyone around. And how do you think, not laugh at that? Like, what is this about? And everyone was asking me how I was getting through it. And it was like, all I could think is like, there just really isn't any choice. And then you just try to take it day by day and find the things like, for example, this is very specific, but on the day that you know that you're going to go through something really crappy, that you have to go and get scans and you have to get your COVID test up, touching your brain, that was probably like the worst thing out of the whole situation, is that afterwards, maybe we can go grab some ice cream, or afterwards I can sit with my husband and watch like a really terrible romantic comedy. Afterwards, I can take a nap, because we're just taking these little steps and we're just not guaranteed anything but the moment that we're in. And boy, did I get that lesson slapped across my face I guess it's been a year and a half ago. And where you're just totally vulnerable to the doctors, you're totally vulnerable to whatever outcome it's going to be. When they open your body up and they'd say, well, you may or may not even be able to speak again. We'll see what happens. We'll see if you live through this. And it's like, I was just running around doing life and didn't know that something was threatening it until you wake up one day and a doctor looks at you and says, I can't believe you're sitting here. So I just want to say with such gratitude, I'm so glad that I'm sitting here with you this afternoon and with you, Chuck. You're such an inspiration. And being able to continue to tell the story and to be honest is my greatest, to still have the voice to do it and the energy and the health to do it is my greatest gift. So thank you all for being such support and such a great audience. So I want to end with a song that has been one of my favorites. We were talking a lot about change and about things that are out of our hands. When I moved back home, that was really when I decided to dive into that storytelling and really see if I could just do it as part of my life. And it really has been something that I've been able to do as part of my life and as part of my job out here in the middle of nowhere. And I really appreciate that. So I wrote this song, though, thinking, coming back to your hometown, it's changed from 1,200 people in the biggest county in the state to 10,000 people overnight. And all of these news stations and all of these people were wanting to tell the story of what was happening in our community from what they got from a snapshot or a 5-minute visit on the phone or an hour visit on the phone or a trip overnight to our community. And there was truth in those stories, of course, but the truth that I found in being there and being really lucky to be a generation born there, so I had a place to come to, so we had a place to work. None of it was the answer that people were asking me, well, you have to hate it. You have to absolutely hate it, okay? Or you must absolutely love it. You must be a millionaire because of it. No, and I don't absolutely love it, and I don't absolutely hate it. And listen, it's complicated. There's not one thing in this life that I have found and now I'm 38, raising 2 little girls, that isn't complicated, except for, maybe the love that you have for the people that are supporting you. And that you support. That's complicated too, but the idea that you love them no matter what isn't. So I wanted to somehow create this story in a song, and this was maybe the easiest song that I wrote, but the one that I'm most proud of because it did capture, I hope, that folk message, the thing that I always admired about people like Chuck and people like Lyle Lovett and all of these songwriters, Harry Chapin, that I was growing up with, that they could capture these people. I wanted to capture the people that were standing in long lines at the post office, that were coming out to Western North Dakota to live in a camper, for God's sakes, because it was better here at 40 below than it was down south where they came from. Can you possibly imagine what your life would have been like, that you would leave your family to come live up here in essentially the coldest place on earth in January in a camper? there's got to be some compassion for that. There's got to be a story there. And so I just started listening and learning and thinking about my relatives and thinking about the people that have come here to make a better life. That's what they were trying to do. The people that were living in the Walmart parking lot, they were looking for a better life in my little town. And so that's complicated. That's not something you get to love or hate because you don't know that story. So I sat down on my on the little bed in the little house where my dad was raised, and my husband was cooking Nefla soup. God bless him. And I can still smell it cooking. I was like 5 feet away in the bedroom, trying to write what perhaps some of these people were feeling and experiencing. So this is called Boomtown. And while I could do this all day, I'm going to leave you with this song and let Chuck finish us for the afternoon. Donnie's got a truck and he's always here on time. Big buttes and gravel roads, keeps it between two lines. $30 an hour and the pay is good, but no time's better spent than the way your daddy should. Still he hangs around Boomtown. Shelly don't stop moving till the sun goes down. What she once was, she's not. What she's lost now found brings them breakfast in the morning and ice cold beer at night. She listens to them talk. She breaks up their fights. She stands her ground. Oh, Boomtown. Oh, people lying like houses up and down the street. Bottom line below us, about 10,000 feet. 22 below, you find a better place to go. You'd be here till you know you'd hang around. Oh, Boomtown. Heard they just got married down in Arkansas. They lost a child and a job before he made the call. Heard the weather's rough and the housing's few. That's something for me, sir. Oh, what's a man to do but try his round? Oh, Boomtown. Up and down the street. Bottom line below us, about 10,000 feet. 22 below, you find a better place to go. You'd be here too, you know, you'd hang around Boomtown. Stopped by the farmhouse the other day. Jimmy's moved back home. He's helping Dad cut hay. Pumps in the morning, but he gets home by 5. We almost lost him there. Oh, now he's more alive. Oh, God bless the sound. Oh, Boomtown. Just a thank you. A quick little wrap up to that song, and it's probably one of the reasons it's my favorite because I think of Donnie every time that I sing it. I got a phone call on the landline. We have a landline out there after I played that song on a news station, and it was a man on the other end of the line with a thick Southern accent, and he said, "I'm looking for the girl who wrote that song, Boomtown," and I had just written it. I had just played it on the news, and that was probably like 8 years ago. And I said, just taken aback, like no one calls the landline but my dad. And I said, "Well, that's me." And he said, "Well, you must know me. I played that over and over, rewound it, played it over and over last night on that segment. You must know me. You wrote that song about me, didn't you?" And I thought, well, no, I don't know. I don't know you. I just wrote that song about people that I thought, I see around here. And he said, "Well, my name's Donnie, and I just got married, and I drive a truck, and I'm from Arkansas." Yeah. And so I thought, what? Oh, wow. So there are people, that's you, Donnie. This is what the song's about. And he was living in Crosby with 2 daughters who played hockey. And I think about him often, and I told a story in Crosby a couple summers ago, and someone from the back, it was like at a threshing show or whatever, said, "Oh yeah, Donnie's still here. He works at the implement dealership." So I think that and I think Chuck would agree. If you could just get that feedback that something that you wrote spoke to someone, that's it. That's all I want. So thank you.
Wow, and you give so much, Jessie. Thank you. Well, we're going to finish up here. This has just been delightful. For me, anyway. And thank you to the Library Association and Beth for thinking about this, and the lovely poster. That's a great poster. I get the poster. Okay. And thank you for braving the cold and coming here safely. Another song that came out of the Art for Life project was after I had telephone conversation with 4 women from Jamestown at the Heritage retirement community there. They were all in their mid to late 90s, and we were talking about isolation and how they were dealing with it. And they all had this very positive point of view because they all said they had gone through tough things before. And through is the key word, as you alluded to. You go through that trip to wherever the doctor was. And so they were not down at all. And so I just kept taking notes and listened to them. We had these long conversations, so I'm still sort of ambivalent of what the title of this song is. And right now I'm kind of settling in on maybe the 4 wisdoms or the 4 wise, maybe, W-I-S-E. And they all talked about how they reflected on their childhood, too, having grown up on the prairie. And they all had worked with horses. And they all said, we went to dances a lot, even in the hard times. During the Depression, there would be a dance at Stump Lake Pavilion or some places like that. Donna was a small-town girl, met the man who changed her world, a farmer with a wheat field lawn. 30 years they built a home. When he passed, she carried on, farmed alone, a quarter century. Talks about the time to come, to be afraid she ain't been one, never bored, never have been. Oh, we worked with horses every Saturday, danced our cares away. Oh, we worked with horses, never knew we were among the common poor. Got that down now? For the next one. Gladys grew up farm girl strong. Met a man she loved right on. They married and dairied. In the evening, quilts were sewn to warm souls of those unknown. Her love to ride on. Loretta had the marriage best until he met eternal rest. He was who he was, a happy fella. She looks upon her working hands, no longer strong, young, or tan. Wrongly thinks, now good for nothing. Here we go. Oh, we worked with horses every Saturday, danced our cares away. Oh, we worked with horses, never knew we were among the common poor. When they talk of what's to come, it will be toughest on the young, who don't know joy can get you through, who never knew what we had to. Frances, filled with fortitude, she got a gift, good attitude, young at heart, most important part. It was a pretty darn good life. I was a pretty darn good wife to a pretty good man. You do the best you can. Have at it. Oh, we worked with horses every Saturday, danced our cares away. Oh, we worked with horses, never knew we were among the common poor. Oh, we worked with horses every Saturday, danced our cares away. Oh, we worked with horses, never knew we were among the common poor, never knew we were among the common poor. Jessie Veeder Schofield.
Chuck, Suchy. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
What a night.
Thank you.
Talking about